Hey, thanks for joining me. I've got a comic book here from an indie creator that is very different from the normal stuff that I look at on the channel. Most of the stuff I look at is like old 90s stuff, and I'm always kind of pointing out the few bits of them that are like really entertaining and still good. And then often I'm talking about why some of this other stuff just doesn't work and it's just awful. And, I'd like to cover a wider assortment of things. But this one's very different. I would say it's kind of. I'm not trying to speak for the creative team and the writer and creator, but it kind of feels like it's like an experimental kind of thing. It's very different. It's very interesting in the way that it's put together. But this is Sons of the Sun: The Tales of R from Danny Bedrosian. If you've watched my channel, I have I was going to say an interview, but it's not an interview, but it's a live conversation with Danny Bedrosian on my channel where we talk about some specific issues of the Fantastic Four that he's a big fan of and I had never seen. So if you could go seek that out on my channel a couple of months ago as of this recording. But Danny Bedrosian, I've had the very good fortune of making this man's acquaintance. He is, in addition to being a comic nerd, like most of us, he is, and I'm going to kind of like the way that he verbalized it on that video we did where we talked about Fantastic Four. I said, introduce yourself. And he's got a great way of just kind of summing it up of who he is and what he does. Kind of paraphrasing here, he is a best-selling author, a historian, and a professional musician, the keyboardist to George Clinton, excuse me, George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, in addition to his own band that he tours with. Professional musician. He was a big fan of the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. He happens to be he was personal friends with Ed Piskor, and he is friends with Jim Rugg. And just through my channel, I've had the good fortune that he just kind of would, stop in. He apparently watched my channel and he stops in on my live streams on occasion. He introduced himself and told me who he was, and I've just kind of been able to keep in contact with him. And he's a great guy, and he makes his own comics, and he likes to do these stories based on his knowledge of history, specifically parts of history that we don't normally kind of get to hear a lot about, because, I mean, when you think about it, like, it's obvious. Everyone understands. The world is huge. There's cultures everywhere, and there's stories and history that, unless, when you're just kind of in school, there's only so much time and space to learn certain amount of things, right? But then, there's a whole vast world of information and, stories that you just kind of never hear about. So he's being a historian, a very well learned, learned guy who knows just tons of information. He wants to take these stories that he knows and puts them into a comic book. That's kind of my understanding. Again, I'm not trying to speak for the man, but he makes some interesting stuff. I have shown two of his books on my channel already, and this is the most recent one. I've had it in my hands for a couple weeks, which, again, like, I've been doing these indie books. I'm trying to get these all out in the same week, because I've backlogged like 6 or 7 of them. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are all gonna just kill me. But this one, it's just very different. Sons of the Sun: The Tales of R. So, written by Danny, Mr. Bedrosian. This is all his stuff, and it's done by a bunch of different artists. I didn't know that until I got to the end of it. You get to the back cover. All these pages done by this whole assortment of various different people, including Brian Moss. So that's crazy awesome. And there he is, signed it to me, to my friend Rob. Thank you, Danny Bedrosian. I like his little sign-off, little keyboard thing. That's just super badass. But it's kind of like I said, it's kind of an experimental type comic, meaning it's not formatted in kind of the same way. We're just going to kind of read along. I wish I had like Morgan Freeman's voice, so it made it sound more interesting than my dumb voice is going to make it sound. But I've only got the one voice, so we're just going to go with it. Starts, I love like the black page just starting in an empty void. Just kind of give you a heads up. It's kind of like I was going to say an alternate telling of the creation of the universe. I mean, it's from the perspective from a culture that is not kind of like the Christian view specifically, but it does kind of sort of follow the same basic-ish format. There was nothing, and then an explosion created everything. Gods were created that created the universe. It's kind of that thing, but told from a different perspective. I actually found it really interesting as I read it. I was like, oh God, I really like the way this is put. Mr. Bedrosian, he might be a, first-rate professional I almost said magician. Jesus Christ, musician. Good Lord, but the man knows how to write. Starts out saying, first, and for an incalculable number of forevers, there is nothing. Nothing exists as the immutable everything in the shadow galaxy of never, for nothing interposed with the limits of nowhere, obeying and enveloping itself in the nothingness. I was like, ooh, I like what that sounded like. I like that. And then there's this symbol. Now, I don't know what this little symbol is. This symbol will become important visual thing throughout the book. I'm going to just assume that symbol has some kind of historic context. I'm guessing, but whether it does or it doesn't, it's an important symbol for the story. So the text continues. Suddenly and without measure, the appearance of something prevailed upon the nothing. The great R was born. R arose from nothing, the child of darkness and silence. Immediately from the inconceivable birth of the deity, and upon the nothing's receipt of R's eternal gaze, diminished itself of its nothingness and became everything all at once. So it's kind of like the, creation of the universe, a giant explosion. I kind of really like that exploding shot. It's really cool. And then in the visuals was just kind of silent, like the visual of the exploding universe also forming kind of a representation of a figure, like a humanoid figure that we would recognize to visually tell you it's a being coming into existence. And then continuing over here, R crested and swept, shining brighter than the darkness could withstand, illuminating all before it and creating all that it never knew before. I really like the way that that's verbalized. That's really neat. That's a really neat shot. That's really cool. And then there is that symbol again that I was talking about, done in. And then this stuff, like some of the stuff, is digital art. If I had to guess, I don't know. I don't want to. I'm going to sound like a chucklehead if I get this wrong. But I'm guessing this might be a Brian Moss. Because if you look at it, it's like a physical piece of real art. You can see the paint strokes and the splatter as opposed to, and this is not a critique by any means, but some digital art versus something created by hand. That's really neat. That's really cool. But yeah, so there's that symbol. The text continues. And the great R thrust its fiery children to and fro, consuming all which they approached. These fiery offspring, clad only in their destruction, consumed and created the celestial bodies of the known universe. The great R thrust so many of them in every direction, the galaxies sprung up simultaneously in all quadrants of the known universe. And so these little shapes start coalescing into more distinctive shapes with specific symbology that we might recognize from our own culture to some degree. And then here they just travel through space, the universe, forming constellations and stuff. It says, soon these illuminated ascendancies found themselves in control of vast worlds of their own for a millennia of millennia. Civilizations rose and fell like tidal waves, consuming the ashes of themselves over and over again against the undaunted spirit of sand. The sand grew and it grew. Wise plants became powerful entities in their own right. The great R, in its great wisdom and its great singular all-seeing I-self, cast its fiery breed upon the denizens of this new universe in order to create life immemorial. Again, a crazy kind of visual representation of this creation of life. It's just wild. It's how could you describe this to anybody? Like, that's just... It's wild. What could I say? On one planet, the great R was able to create skies of blue, forests of verdant green, and soon, through the intercession of one of the great R's most inventive and most violent intentions, man. I'm like, oh man, I really like how this is progressing. Like, you kind of get what's going on. It's a creation of universe over vast amounts of time, including up to and including us. So here's a map. It says, on this new promising world, there lay a fertile yet foreboding land, and the concourses of the four rivers, Euphrates, Tigris, Aretsani, again, I'm sorry if I mispronounce these, Aretsani and Arax, there rose up a great basin and sunning highlands bounding it on all sides. And then you get a shot of this land and the people. It says, within that great basin dwelt a confederation of many different tribes, most of whom had inhabited this land since its foundation by R. Within their lands there was an upspring of wheat cultivation and an appearance of fruits and vegetables hitherto unseen, and the new domestication of many wild beasts which had inherited this land, much as man had. So you just see, humanity progressing and cultivating and creating agriculture. This page, I love this. Again, it looks like a hand-painted piece of art. It looks fantastic. With these newfound innovations springing up around them, these people enacted their wisdom and their powers far beyond their borders, teaching neighboring peoples their progress. So like they travel out and instruct and pass along information and knowledge, showing civilizations getting bigger, stronger, creating structures. The text continues, they found reverence in the greatness of R and their worship and worshipped R as their founder and their savior. These people, proud and strong and favoring the great God with their fiery eyes, became known as, again, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, Arivordi, Arevordi, Arivordi, the Sons of the Sun, which is the title of this book, which is also the main title of the other books that I've shown on the channel that he's created. So it's kind of like a backstory of the people that he's specifically focusing on. Really interesting. Like, I like the progression of it. It's just kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of hesitant to kind of try to explain it, because this is with knowledge of history and cultures far beyond my understanding of things I've never heard about, from this kind of specific kind of approach. And it's such kind of like an experimental visual thing that the words kept me going through it. Like, I mean, the visuals, of course, but it's so different and it's so odd, but the text kept you going and kept pushing me forward. I thought it was verbalized, that the text worked really well. Danny, like, you're a great writer, man. I loved every word of this thing. I found interesting. It worked. And you didn't over explain everything. There's just enough to tell you just what you need to know, that we can read the basics and then follow the visuals. And then we're kind of left with a certain amount of just like, I wonder what this means. I wonder what this is about. It kind of makes you like, maybe I should go find out more about what he's talking about. And you want to do that, go pick up more of his book. So I'll have a link to his work. Back cover, Danny Bedrosian. He did this one. That's his work. It's just really interesting. It's just very different. And this is what the comics world needs. We don't need nothing but Batmans and Supermans. What we need is books that are something different, that give you a different perspective, a different appreciation, an exposure to a different culture. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating. I really enjoyed this one, actually. It just, the whole progression of the story, I really enjoyed it. So Danny, like, well done, well written, man, and some fascinating art in there. Very different, I don't know if I could show this to my 11-year-old son. He probably wouldn't give a shit. He's like, where's Spider-Man kicking Venom in the nuts? I'm like, I know, son. But, this is very different, but very interesting. So Danny Bedrosian, he's awesome. Again, I'll have links to his stuff in my in the video here. But I consider myself a very lucky guy to be able to call Danny Bedrosian my friend. Great dude. And I go seek him out. He's like I said, a professional musician and comic fan and writer. The guy's got it all. So that's pretty awesome stuff. So thank you, Danny, for sending this to me. And that's all I've got on this one. Thank you for joining me as always. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time.